like to call to order the 37th meeting of the Tri-Town Group. It is Wednesday, March 4th at 7:01. Our first agenda item in here is discussion of the FY21 Nashoba Regional School District's budget, the latest status, and Brooke,
Yeah.
please.
And
Do you want to use the, whatever you're most comfortable with? You can stand if you prefer, and we can move that little dais out. And
no, that's fine.
Lauren, you okay here?
If that's okay.
what did I forget already, Ron? An introduction? Okay. Well, we'll get settled. We'll introduce where you need to introduce ourselves. My name is Stan Starr. I'm the chairman of the Lancaster Board of Selectmen. On my right is Walter Sandrowski, who's a clerk of the Lancaster Board of Selectmen. Jay Moody is our member, and I'll let the rest of you guys do your thing.
Bob Sikansky from the Bolton Board of Selectmen.
Stan Wysocki, Bolton Board of Selectmen.
Brooke Clenchy, Superintendent.
Pat Maroney, I'm the business manager for Nashoba Regional School District.
Don Lowe, Bolton Town Administrator.
Yeah, any other elected officers, please introduce yourselves if you would.
Kathy Cody and Lancaster Rep and Chair of the Nashoba Regional School Committee.
Stephen Joseph Gleason, Lancaster Rep for the Nashoba Regional School District.
Mike Horsch, Bolton Rep.
Mary McCarthy, the Nashoba Regional Bolton Rep.
I think
Todd McGuire, Assistant Superintendent of Schools.
okay, is there anyone representing Stowe here this evening? Did I miss it's becoming the dual group here rather than the tri-group, but that's okay. All we can do is invite. Okay, so let's get into discussion of the budget for this coming fiscal year.
Sure, I'll get started, and then if you've got questions. We have been going around and meeting with your FinComs. We met with the Lancaster FinCom and the Bolton FinCom. Stowe is on tap for towards the end of this month. So, which is typical for us, is what we normally do to go around, and so that everybody's got a flavor of where we're headed. The actual budget has not been approved yet by the school committee, and so we're not in a position to give you, like the budget book, for example, until that's approved, because we anticipate that they still may make some changes on Wednesday night at their next meeting. So we'll just go through it quickly. I know that we've got quite a long agenda tonight. So the proposed budget that we've set forward for the regional district is $58,029,848, and the increase is $296,047. It's a total increase from last year's budget of 4.12. As you know, we worked very hard this year to back into a number. Normally, that's not what we do. Because we see ourselves as the advocate for the children in the district, but we worked very, very hard this year to back into the number. So Bolton's increase over last year is exactly 3%, Lancaster is 2.77%, and Stowe is 1.37%.
Just 1 second.
Yeah.
I thought you said you don't have a budget yet.
We haven't, it's not voted on.
Okay, so this is
Proposed.
proposed.
This is a proposed, yes, this is like the draft, yeah.
Thank you.
The school committee was also incredibly sensitive to making sure that we came in at the 3% for Bolton, so I don't see us making any substantial changes.
Okay.
So this is where the budget sits today. You can take a look at the increase from last year and the percentage of increases. I won't read them all because I know that you can read. So we'll go over to the next page, and I'm going to have Pat talk you through the next page or two.
So Lancaster in particular had requested that I talk a little bit about debt. And so I broke out the debt assessment as it stands. As you can see that there is an increase in the debt assessment for next year for each town, and there's a reason for that. And if you flip over the next page, the track debt increased in our budget, and you'll see an increase in the assessment for that, mainly because in the past few years we've been using revolving fund, our excess revolving funds, to offset some of the cost of that debt. Basically what that is the athletic user fee, gate receipts. And in the last 2 years, we've had a downslide on the number of ticket sales because of the mosquitoes And because we can't have the night games on Friday night, so it has a significant impact on that. So when we don't have the money in the revolving fund, we can't operate a negative revolving fund, so it has to be picked up in the budget. And I'm forecasting the same for fiscal year '21, so that's why that's there. The other piece for that, for the increase, is the oil tank and leach field debt. Last year, when we went to the towns and asked for them to approve the borrowing for the repair to the oil tank and the leach field, that's also included in there. And you may also see some changes. Each assessment's different because the assessment for debt is based on the population at the high school. It isn't the overall population.
That was my next question to you. Why the disproportionate number to that?
Right, and if there's any shift in enrollment at the high school, what you'll see is a little bit of change in your assessment. It's only over a 3-year period, which is much more volatile than over 5 years.
Over the page, these are some of the key budget drivers that we were dealing with this year. And I know that your towns are dealing with the same kind of things that we are in this area. Our Worcester Regional retirement assessment this year was up by 10.21%. So it's kind of hard when you're trying to squeeze into a 3% when you're dealing with those kinds of things. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying that's just reality, right, that you're dealing with.
Is that the fund involvement? Is that where the monies are invested for that?
No, it's not, it has nothing to do with OPEB, is that what you're asking?
No,
Oh, I'm
specific
sorry.
to retirement itself, not OPEB, but the investment itself for the town. No, never mind, forget it. It's OPEB I'm talking. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep.
The other district tuition is another thing that has some ebb and flow to it, and those are for our children who we can't offer services, we don't have services available within the district, and so we have to send them out of district to receive whatever it is that their needs, to meet their needs. And so this year, we just have a higher proportion than we've had, since my time anyway. A lot of it is a lot of move-ins that we're seeing, particularly from out of state. And I'm not saying anything other than that's just a trend that we're seeing right now. So we have a 30% increase in there. With the influx of special education students requiring services, we've had to add some additional staffing if that's necessary. We have to do that in order to be in compliance. So there's a little bit of addition of staff in that area. And there was only one regular ed teacher added, and that was in Bolton, and that was for K. And that was just as a result of registrations with new housing and that kind of thing. So there wasn't anything other than that.
These are mandated.
Yeah, the special ed is mandated, yeah. The Unit A and C contract matrix is also a driver for us because about half of our teaching staff is in that matrix, and so that means that they are moving steps and possibly lanes as well. The steps is the education experience, the lane is if they have any additional education for professional development that they go out, perhaps they might get another degree or whatever. So it's possible for somebody to go to a step and a lane, and then there's the 2% on top of that for COLA. And that, of course, that's only to a maximum of so many years, and then they're at that salary for the rest of their lives type thing, as long as they're in the Nashoba district. So that makes it hard because that's not just a 2% increase for us with half of our staff. So that's a key driver for us when we do our budgeting. The other thing that's in here, of course, is the former Minuteman positions. You'll recall that we had some discussion. This was not done in isolation. This was done with good consult with our town administrators as well as our principals and such. These were the positions that Minuteman had in our grade 8 level across the district. There was one in each community. And the communities have been paying for those positions anyway. It's just that it came through on your assessment, your individual assessments. So you were already paying for those. You can almost just see that as a shift now between it being in that budget and it's being in our budget now. So because we didn't delete those positions, but those teachers were on the Minuteman contract. They were being paid by Minuteman. They, in terms of business, evaluation processes were by Minuteman. All that, it didn't make any sense. It made sense that they were our people. So those positions will be advertised and then filled this year. We have, in Bolton, we have a retirement there, so there's an opening there. So that's kind of where those sit. So there's, in essence, in your 3%, for example, in Bolton, in your 3%, that's 3%, and then you've kind of got less that 100,000 or whatever it was for what you'd normally have. I think Lancaster was 129,000 actually, so yours was probably right in that ballpark as well. So that's in there too.
Just a question on out-of-district tuition.
Yeah, yes.
So if, to your point, they can't, whatever program we don't have, they have to go out. So there's no burden on the parents.
No burden on the parents, no.
Well, can there be a burden on the parents?
Not through statute, not through the mandates that we are under,
Nothing?
no.
Okay, all right.
There's nothing that can happen with that.
The only sense of relief that we ever get from
Thank you for bringing that up.
district tuition is if there's another if the family is coming from another community within Massachusetts, there's a cutoff date, and this allows us to plan for the tuition a year in advance. So basically what happens is we may be paying for a kid that moved because we budgeted for this child, and then they've actually moved to another community. It gives them another year, and then the same side, if somebody moves in with us, somebody else will pay their tuition for that budgeted year.
Right.
So there is a little bit of, wouldn't call it relief,
Yeah.
but it allows you to budget for it anyway.
The other thing to keep in mind too, so you didn't go down the pathway that I thought you were gonna go down, is circuit breaker, right? Because this is also linked to circuit breaker. And circuit breaker is a little convoluted. There's a foundation, I don't know exactly what the number, I don't think we even know what the number is gonna be this year, but let's say it's around, generally in the $40,000, maybe $43,000 for the first $3,000 that comes up. So anything above that, for example, we do have some students that are out at $200,000, $250,000 placements. You get a portion of that back through the circuit breaker. And every year that's determined through the state budget process of how much that will be, what percentage. It's sometimes as high as 72, 73% of that. I've seen other years where, like several years ago, where it was like 60s, 50s, and I believe even 40 at one point in time. We're expecting that should be probably in the 70s is what we're anticipating right now for this upcoming year. So do keep that in mind, but also keep in mind that it's a year behind, right? So you have to have that child and expend that money before you get that reimbursement. So we're planning ahead because we know right now, but we will get some relief, and that's what made me think of it when you said the word relief.
I was correct in hearing that some students are paying $250,000.
It could be, depending on it, yeah.
And the parents have no burden on that at all.
No.
Maybe we need to talk to the state about that.
You feel free to, we've tried. I can assure
Would
you
be a
we've
new
tried.
conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly right, it's not
Yeah, I
a new
know,
conversation, yeah.
Do you sense we're disproportionately affected by that as a district?
No, I don't think so, to be honest with you. And even our special education percentage right now, we're a little higher than the state average. But you got to remember that the state average has some higher and some lower, right? And so we're kind of right in that ballpark.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would tell you that when I first came in, our numbers were lower than they are now. But we see shifts in our population, and that's all it is. And there's really nothing any of us around the table could do about that except respond to it. So that's where we're sitting. So in order for us to get to the numbers that we got to, we have, when the budget comes out, and I don't know how specific we'll be able to put on the budget lines the actual positions. Right now, if you were to look at the executive summary, it shows like a block of around $700,000 in unidentified cuts. We know that that's these 9 staff positions. So there will be 9 staff that will be cut across the district. Of those 9 staff, right now, we have identified 5 through natural attrition. And you can say, well, it's natural attrition, and so that's easier, and in some ways it is. But you always have to keep in mind that those people were doing a job, and so whatever position they leave, there will be implications thereafter to other people around them to pick up whatever it was. Yeah, pick up the slack of whatever.
Is this for the entire district, or is this?
Yes, this is the entire district, the entire district. We streamlined some programs. The one that comes to mind for me is a mentorship program. We have a mentorship program, and for the most part, we've been, I think, relatively liberal with people coming into the school district and taking part in that mentorship program. And we took a look at it right
So
away and
teachers,
said,
teacher
right, these are our
mentors.
teachers, mentors, thank you. And we took a look at it and said, we can't afford that anymore. So for example, that program, I think we cut around $20,000 from that program. So we took a look at various programs, and wherever we could streamline them somewhat, that's what we did. The OPEB funding, we've tried very hard. You know that 2 years ago we set up our trust account, and we've been trying really hard to put money into that account every year. And we've tried really hard to put, in the neighborhood of 100,000 in there a year. When we first started the budget process this year, that's exactly what we put in there. But right now, that's an area that only has 50,000 in it. And I don't know whether the school committee will agree to continue with that 50,000 moving forward on Wednesday night or not. So it's less than we would normally like to put in there, but we felt that that was an area that
Is
would.
that still in the 40 million category of unfunded
Yeah.
liability?
Yeah, and I believe it's up for review right now.
Right, yeah, there's a new valuation
Valuation, yeah.
as of the end of fiscal year 19, yeah.
So that would be presumably positive, and who knows what 20 brings, but who knows anything, yeah.
The other thing that you'll remember that we established a stabilization fund for our track, for the turf field and such a couple of years ago. And that was just working from our lens to be fiscally prudent. We know that track is going to have to be replaced, certain components of it. So rather than be in a position like we were with the leach field and oil tank, it made sense for us to set money aside and kind of like a savings account, so to speak, in a stabilization fund. And I think we've got 100 and some thousand in there right now and I think we started that 2 years ago as well. But we know that the work that's gonna have to be done on that is probably around 300,000. So we can see this coming, that this is on the horizon in the next probably 2 years or so.
This has been effective since the last 10 years. Was the last time was any work done in that ballpark of any,
No, not to that field.
been longer?
This, in
It was only
this,
installed 10 years ago.
Well-
I was gonna say, I think that was maybe the installation area.
there are actually two things that have to happen with this. One of them is what they call the wear layer, which is what we're coming up upon right now. And in order for the track to last its life expectancy, you have to replace that wear layer after so many years. And this is what we're trying to get to right now. And that's the $300,000 cost. Then we would continue to put money into this stabilization fund to fund if and when the time comes that we replace the entire, the entire surface of it.
However, we may have a new project to play by that point in time, and who knows, it's hard to say. So anyway, what we've done this year is we backed off on what we would normally put into that account too, and right now there's 50,000 that we've got in this year's budget for that as well. I don't know whether that will stay in there Wednesday night or not, depending on what the school committee's desire is.
It's fair to say, though, even if the new project goes forward, and in 7 years, 5 to 7 years, we had a new school, before 5 to 7 years, there's still work
We're still
that's
gonna have to
be
do
done
work on
the
it,
track.
that's
Something
exactly
definitely,
right.
and that was the point I was trying to bring out.
And then, of course, we looked at various school non-salary lines in our offices, and you'll see on the next sheet, we did it at the schools as well. Additionally, facilities, we cut back dramatically in our facilities department. Don't feel really comfortable about that, but that's where it's at. And additional IT, we were saying to your FinComs, our IT department set up 4 individual budgets. And the first draft of the budget, it was like level 1, then the next one was level 2. Right now, I think it's kind of hybrid between 3 and 4. It's kind of, what do we have to have here?
What kind of specificity with those numbers, additional facilities reduction? What does that mean financially or?
Yeah, financially, thank you, yeah,
or
financially.
volume-wise?
Pardon?
Are we losing people?
No, that's not, no, that's just like money that was designated to buildings for different projects and that kind of thing. That was probably the biggest place. We had a vehicle in there that we desperately need to continue to evergreen our vehicles. And there was a vehicle in there that, for example, that we pulled. And so those are the kinds of things, kinds of assets, yeah. And then the schools all made reductions to their non-salary lines. For example, the high school probably around 20,000, I think is what they made. And just, I don't wanna say the paperclip lines, but those like general supplies and that kind of thing. Additionally, you wanna just quickly talk about the next page?
Also, a little over a year ago, the school committee voted to transfer some funds from the revolving funds. There's some funds that were built up in some of the accounts, and they decided that they wanted to fund a couple of our important liabilities, one of them being the OPEB fund. You'll see that this money, it's going to flow through E&D this year, and this is the process that it has to go through so that it's public to the towns. $100,000 will be going into OPEB, and $200,000 from the revolving funds will also be going towards the funding of full-day kindergarten.
Where would be the funding, where would that investment be made for the OPEB funding? Where is that going into?
We have a trust account set up, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but who's doing the management of it? What type of exposure? Is it equity? Is it bond? Is it fixed incomes?
It's,
I
we're
think we
using
followed your lead, I think. Who
Is it the
oversees
PRIT
yours?
fund?
PRIT
Pension
fund, yeah.
Reserve Investment Trust?
I think you had recommended them, and I think that we
Yeah.
had brought them in, and I believe the school
Yeah.
committee made the vote, and that's who we're with now.
That's what they
They've
decided
got
to
a
go
very
with.
good track record and solid, and we've been with them 4 years, 5 years.
Well, I think you were quite pleased with them, so that's why, one of the reasons we went there.
16% last year. Who knows, might lose 16% this year, but,
Yes,
no, I think it was a wise move, but you're not gonna get much with a 10-year treasury at less than 1%.
Right,
That's
exactly.
not gonna cut it.
No, I think we feel very comfortable with them. So that in a nutshell is kind of where we're at. I do have a sheet or two for the MSBA update and such. I'm not sure if you would like me to wait on that, or did you have any further questions on the budget? And did you want to go into your discussion about your town's budgets?
Pass it around. Bob, any questions? Stan? Okay. Walter? Connie?
Okay.
Well done.
Thank you.
Just don't come back to us next week and say we didn't agree, but we're gonna change things.
I think you'll be okay.
Same numbers as last night.
Yeah. So did you want to have your discussion? We'll sit back then and come back to the table to talk about MSBA, or what
Yeah, I don't
would
know
you
if
like
there's
to
any
proceed?
discussion we haven't yet engaged in or wish to share. I know we had the last meeting that was hosted by Bolton was don't exceed 3. We can't handle that number. And if this matches it, then we're on the right track. Whether the approval is going to be there or not remains to be seen. So that's my take on
It
it.
just seems to me that everybody has finally got the picture, things are gonna get tough. It's not good.
Yeah, we don't expect it to be much better next year.
No, we're not projecting a good year next year either.
I think the pivot point was last year, actually, when we had the fund, balance the budget with free cash, and we're gonna have to do that this year as well.
We won't have to apply as much free cash this year as we did last year, so, you know, we're still gonna have to apply free cash. I think we applied 225 last year.
At least.
I'm hoping we can cut that in half this year.
Yeah.
So
We're at about a 200,000 deficit right now as presented. 195 is the last number I heard. That's where we stand as a town, even with the assumption of the 3.
Something that didn't come up now that you're mentioning that is we've got $1 million in here from E&D. That didn't come up in our discussion of
For
budget.
what, please?
From our E&D fund, our excess and deficiency fund, there's $1 million in here, and that's the fund that's kind of sitting out there that through our forensic audit, we were trying so hard to get off that wheel, and we just can't seem to, and we every year we were trying to take it down. Since I've been here, we're trying to take it down, and this year it just got blown out of the water, so.
That's a good point, Stan, because we still, I'm hoping we can get down to $100,000. I mean, we consider it to be a deficit if we have to apply any free cash
Yeah, same.
to the operating budget. So we're probably looking at $100,000 deficit as opposed to 225.
It's structural, right? And it's not part of the.
No, it's structural. I mean, there were times, not every year, but there have been times when we don't need to underwrite the operating budget with free cash, which is what the preferred method is. but we can't always do that. So what we're hoping to do is keep it to $100,000 or so and do no borrowing for whatever capital that we do. We're hoping to be able to apply the balance of free cash to that, so we have a year without debt. And then next year, we know we're gonna be incurring some debt next year, but there'll be some debt also coming off our debt schedule. So we're hoping to be able to kind of balance that.
Let me ask a simple question. It may not be a simple answer, but is there any reason to think that any of our agreements past debt can be refinanced? Anything that's currently going on?
Anything, what?
Is there any opportunity to refinance the current debt that's incurred by any town?
We refinanced all of ours last year. We got our AAA bond rating from S&P. So we've refinanced half our debt in January, the other half in September, and we saved, over the life of the new debt, I think we saved $580,000 with the much improved interest rate that we got. And the second borrowing, we're at like 2.09 or something.
And that's all done through the towns rather than the individual Neshoba Regional. You folks don't control.
No,
this is-
this is totally
town
separate.
debt.
This is just town debt.
Yeah.
This is just town debt. And what I want to point out with Don's announcement is, we did not extend the debt.
You reduced the rate, assumedly.
We reduced
We
the rate.
reduced the rate, and the new debt still ends on the same dates as the debt it replaced.
That's right.
Right, we didn't refinance a 30-year mortgage in year 29
Yeah, I know,
for
I
a
understand.
30-year mortgage.
The rates where
It's
they are.
still 10 years. It's still a 10-year schedule.
Right.
Any other discussion, comments, questions, anyone? Okay, there being none.
Thank you, ladies.
Discussion on members' towns budget outlook. That's not you folks, I guess, that's us. In fact, thank you for being here, appreciate it. I'm gonna ask our chief to come up here next. I know it's further down on the item, but I know he's waiting patiently for us, so. Chief, do you want to give us an update on the ALS ambulance status, please?
Yeah. Are there any specific questions? I know Orlando's has filled you guys in a few times, so I didn't know if there was any specific more you're looking for.
Yeah,
I
you
can
had
give
some
you-
discussion, but.
I can give you the whole rundown of what we're doing.
Jay, you brought this up. Is there any questions that you have?
Well, my only question was, I had read Bolton, the article in Bolton saying they were going it along as well.
Well, what's happened was when we came out, we were looking at doing a regional service. We talked to the state, and we can do it, it's just gonna take a while. And we need to get ALS up and running. So the town of Bolton's gonna go to the ALS level, because they said it's simpler for one of us to go to the ALS level. Bolton Fire Chief's a medic. Between the two of us, we felt it was better for a medic to oversee an ALS program. So they're gonna get the ALS up and running, and we'll do like we do with Sterling, like we did with Woods. They will come over and intercept like a mutual aid, we'll pay a fee. So it's gonna work the way it has been. It's just gonna be Bolton at the ALS level right now. In the future, we can look at it, but it takes a lot of money. And I think we're in a situation with Bolton now, with the chief there, that it's gonna be a little less expensive to do it that way. All of us involved.
Chief, you haven't seen any deterioration of service, I assume, and Sterling's
No.
picked up the bulk of it.
Yep,
in the
and
interim.
this is gonna help Sterling just because they've been doing so much with us in Clinton and their own town, so we'd end up splitting the town like we did with Woods. We'll have Bolton do one half, Sterling do the other half.
What's the demarcation line?
I don't know, I'll have to figure that out with Bolton. With Woods, it was easy because they're in the center of town, so we used like Bigelow Garden,
Draw that pink line down the middle of the road.
something like that. But yeah, that's really it. It's just, it was easier for one town to go up to the ALS law. I think June is what he was trying to shoot for, June,
Sure.
July 1st.
July at the latest. June would be great, but we're assuming July.
If we were trying to do the regional, it's just like the dispatch. You have to get recognized by the state legislation, be a municipal separate entity. One town's gonna have to take on all the administration until it gets recognized, and it'd take probably a year anyways to do all of that. And the need is now,
Still a work in progress.
yes.
And the way that we're doing this is, we're not doing a special appropriation at town meeting to use the seed money, if you will. We're using receipts from the existing receipts from the ambulance fund. And Chief Legendre put together basically a cash flow plan where in 9 months, I believe it is, we'll be able to replace all the receipts in our ambulance fund. So by the end of FY '21, it will have been basically revenue neutral for us to get this started. And then with the receipts coming in from the program, it'll pay for itself after that. So we just needed to do the seed money out of the ambulance fund.
I think he's already been advertising for the medic position. Between the two departments, we have enough medics that work for us. They just can't work as paramedics because we're not at the ALS level, that I think we'll be able to staff it, no problem. I don't think anyone's gonna be turning away from that. It's a pretty decent position. So we'll have excellent service. I think we put at least 5-year minimum as a medic in the 911 service, so we'll get experienced guys. And believe it or not, some of the Woods paramedics that worked here are gonna apply, because they were very well, they were good medics. It's not their fault that their company pulled out. So they were very good medics and they know the area, both Bolton and Lancaster.
Great.
Yeah.
So we'll get some good expertise back in the area.
And I'm gonna tell you, I think the working relationship now between Lancaster and Bolton is great. Chief Hanson's been really great to work with. Chief Legendre, can't say enough about him, and
We're in contact almost daily on different issues and some cross-training we're doing. So it's really improved the relationship between our two departments.
As it should be. And hopefully remain that way.
You've done good, Mike.
Do I get a cookie?
And some cider.
No one wants to be the first to crack open that cider.
is that cider from Bolton Orchards?
Yes.
All right.
If it was lemonade, it'd be a different story.
Does anyone have any questions out in the audience or otherwise about the services that are being developed for our communities? Are there any concerns, questions, comments?
It's all good
We all
stuff.
sit here? I think we're good, Michael.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, have a nice night.
Okay, discussion on member towns fiscal 5/21 budget outlook. Who would like to start that conversation? Since our TA is not here, Donald?
All right, well, as I said earlier, we're looking at, for FY '20, we had a operational deficit, if you will, of about $225,000. Sitting with our town accountant, earlier this week, we're looking at hopefully cutting that in half. I'm hoping we can get down to 100,000, there's some decisions that still need to be made. But assuming we can get it down to 100,000, then my goal, our accountant's goal, chair of advisory, and hopefully the selectmen's goal, although they don't know this yet, is to be able to do the capital projects that we want to do and not incur any debt, as I said earlier. I think that it would take our cash reserve not all the way back to where it was, because we have a stated goal, and we stated it to Standard & Poor's as part of our bond rating, that we're gonna try to keep free cash at 350. As I said, last year we went down to 125 because we used 225 under the budget. But the numbers that we ran yesterday show that if we take the cash reserve down to 300, we believe we could pay for all of our capital without incurring any debt. And I think, personally, I think that's preferable to going back to 350 and incurring debt. So that's our goal right now. And the selectmen also have a decision to make next week on one proposed project, a land acquisition. 43 acres of land that the Conservation Commission and many people in town would like to see the town acquire. The appraisal came back today, it was higher than what I was hoping to see. So I don't know, I don't think the number is gonna come down from the number we saw. So, but we'll get an update, a formal update on that next week. So that's where we are. We know that next year is gonna be bad, but at least next year, because this is like trying to tread water this year for us. If we could not incur any debt, then next year have some debt fall off the debt schedule. When we do have to incur debt, we can try to still keep it flat. So that's our goal.
What are your interest rates now, 10-year debt? What the
2.09 was in September, and I think in January it was 2.8-ish, something like that.
209 to 2.8, is that what I heard, or is it way wrong?
I think last January was about 2.8. And I know that when we went back out for the second half in September, it was 2.09. And we had 9 institutions bidding on it. And they were very aggressive.
Money is inexpensive right now.
grateful. Well, like I said, the bond rating made all the difference in the world.
Very good. Well, the only, I can contribute unless Walter or Jay have any other updated information is we're sitting in the town of Lancaster at around $195,000 deficit as we sit here. That's being a very, very conservative capital budget, if any. It's very essentials. We're not going to get into another police cruiser this year to try to save a $40,000 bill or whatever they're in that ballpark. So it's tight. It's tight. So that's where we are unless some mana falls from the sky. We're hoping that our friends at Netflix will be filming again next month, but that won't cover all that deficit. It'll help some.
Yeah.
How much we.
And we have high hopes for North Lancaster too. If that comes to fruit, we'll be
Yeah, we have potential for development.
a lot of potential there, but right now it's.
Our experience was the 1 year that we did defer a police cruiser because we were that bad. We had so much in repairs and so forth, it really wasn't.
Just don't let it cruise.
Gonna pay one, actually, I remember we had one cruiser and basically mothballed by the end of by like May. We just had to park it, we couldn't drive it anymore.
Anything else you want to add, Trey?
No.
Okay, the MBSA update,
Also known as MBA.
MSNBA.
And we picked that up too. And I'm gonna invite Pat to the table and Todd on this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I would have had you stay here. I didn't realize they were
That's okay.
kind of disorderly order here.
And I don't know whether Kathy, you wanna join us or not, but no, you're good, okay. So I'll just give a broad stroke overview, and then if you've got any programmatic questions, for example, Dr. McGuire's here, you can answer that. If I've missed anything, I know that Pat will keep me at the table and she'll put out there what I've missed. So just a quick update, but I think we've already had a bit of this discussion with Bolton, but we haven't at all with Lancaster. So this is just a repeat for you folks. So about a year ago, the school committee, a little bit more than a year ago, decided that they took a vote to put forward an SOI, a statement of interest, with the MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority. And we were close to being accepted into the program last year. In December, they sent a team of from New York over, and with a contingent from the school district and full school committee members, and as well as a team from Boston. And they came out and they did a full tour of the building. And I can tease and say, I think it was because they were really looking to see if everything that the superintendent had written in the SOI was really true. And, you know, I'm sure that that's not it, but I think it kind of was, to be honest with you, because they came in and they were checking everything. And they went through the building from the top of the building to the lowest bowels of the building. And it was clear to them that the building is not in very good shape. And so I thought we might get in last year, but we didn't, and it was okay. And we said, you know, we watched other school districts try over and over again. And so we said, you know, we're just probably gonna have to get queued up here at some point in time. If it's not this year, hopefully it'll be in the next couple of years. So this year, 61 schools were put forward for new buildings, and only 11 were actually taken forward for the vote to invite into the eligibility period. And we were one of those 11. We got a phone call in late November. We hadn't heard anything. I kept calling and leaving messages like, just wondering where you are, how's it going? And every time something major went wrong with the building, I would call them right away and say, just so you know, we've got this leach field issue, now we've got this oil tank issue, and the alarm system is gone now, and the HVAC system, and this is good. So every time something went wrong, I continued to call and let them know that something had gone wrong, if it was big. And most of the things that are going wrong with that building now are big. You know, I mean, if we have to redo the roof, which I suspect we may have to, that's going to be a big price tag. The HVAC system is it's running on fumes. It really is, you know. So we've got, it's not small things that are in that building that are going wrong. Our doors are rotting out at the bottoms, you know, like it's just a lot of stuff.
Your 60-year school?
It is, yeah, that's exactly right. So anyway, and I think, you know, it shows really well because I think our custodians do and our facilities team do an amazing job. So the building itself looks really good, and it's kind of deceiving because it's not till you really look and say, well, wait a minute, what do you mean they take all the air from the one gymnasium and run it down to the locker room and that's the fresh air? You know, like things like that. We have a real bird issue. Like, you'd think that would be a joke, but it's really not. We have a major bird issue in there, that the birds are getting in and they keep trying different things. We're trying new things again this year to try to send the birds off. And it's not that they come and nest once, they come in 3 times. There's like 3 cycles of nesting that happens in there. And it's right in the English social studies wing, and it's loud. And so we've got lovely videos of this. And of course, with that comes birds that don't always make it, and a lot of fecal matter. And so then you also have a large stench that starts about April and goes right through the season. So it's in dire need of something, whatever that looks like, And I think as an administrative team, I don't think we have any preconceived notions. We know that we don't own this building. We're just here to help facilitate whatever it is that our communities decide that they want to do, whatever that appetite is. So we have no preconceived notions here. So then we got a phone call finally in November, and they asked us if we would like to take part in a readiness call. I did call Mr. Sagansky and ask him if he wouldn't mind sitting in, because I knew that he had been involved in the Space Committee way back when. And so he joined us. There were a number of school committee members that sat in that readiness call, and for school district personnel leadership. And really the whole point was to say, and I may be making this too simple, but are you really ready for this? Like, if this goes through, do you really feel that you're ready for the workload, for everything that's going to come with this? And we felt that as a team, we felt that we were ready for it. Now the communities may come back and say, yeah, we're not ready. And that's fine, that's your decision. But we felt as a team that we were ready to tackle this major project. So then the next phone call we got was on, I think, a Friday afternoon, saying, would you like to come to Boston on Wednesday? And it was a snowstorm. We had a delayed start that morning, and so everybody who delays starts for our school district was in the vehicles going into Boston through that snowstorm that morning. And then we got in there, and they put it forward for a vote. And then as soon as they voted us in, they kind of take you as a collective group into an orientation room, and they hand you off to the next specialists that help you. So for example, there are teams of people that help you with your SOI, and each one of these is modules, different modules that you work through. So the first module for us is really the eligibility phase, which really doesn't start until June 1st of 2020. So we're doing a lot of pre-work that we don't really have to do, but I think one of the reasons we got accepted was because our SOI was very strong, and I think we were so well positioned. We had done so much pre-work, and we're doing the same thing now. We're doing an extraordinary amount of pre-work leading up to June, so that when June comes, we can say we're ready to go.
Definition of SOI, please.
Pardon?
You mentioned
A
SOI.
statement of interest.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so it will start then, and in that time period, in that eligibility phase, a lot of things have to happen. We're well aware of that already. We've been handed over to the new person that will oversee us, who helps to oversee regional school districts. So you get somebody really qualified that helps to walk you through. Of course, there's an abundance of paperwork that needs to be done, a lot of programming that needs to be discussed extensively, and that's what Dr. McGuire is doing right now with the staff at the high school. That's going very, very well. And we have, as we look forward to the feasibility study. Now, the feasibility study is the very next module after you're done with the eligibility phase. We can't move into that feasibility study until MSBA takes a vote and tells us that we are truly ready to go into that. I'm hoping that we are ready to make a move into that feasibility study stage after this, the 270 days. Before we move to that, though, we need to have shown that we have garnered the funds or secured some way of getting the funds to do the feasibility study. So, and of course, when I think of this, when we first met, this was also brand new to us. We feel much more grounded now than we did at that particular meeting. So we had talked with the town administrators. All 3 of them were there that day, and we said, when does it seem like a good time to put this on a warrant? Well, it would make sense that we put it on the spring warrant, this upcoming spring warrant, because if you think about it, and this, they were talking about, not everybody will necessarily have a fall town meeting. And then that leads us to the next time, which would be after the February 26th date, which is our 270 days. So we really need to put it on the spring warrant. The language is the same for all communities. The language comes from the MSBA. We have filled in the specifics now, and we've sent it off to our lawyer for our lawyer's perusal before we send it off to the town managers. We should have it to the town managers, I think by Friday, I think is what we're hoping for.
And we're all sitting down, and the estimated cost of that is going to be?
So what the school committee chose to do, we actually took a look at a variety of other school districts who have been in the same position as us. And many of them, not all of them, but many of them had put themselves at the $2 million mark, like a not to exceed. And when we talked to some of the school districts about what they had allocated and what reality happened, whatever that looked like, the differential, we were told over and over again, do not underestimate this and have to go back to your towns for that next 100,000 or 200,000. It's much better that you take that higher number, and then we have to go through a whole procurement process anyway.
But what percent achieved the original budget or exceeded it? Is there any information? You said get enough so you don't have to come back to the process.
What we're
So-
anticipating is probably, when we take a look at schools that are similar to us as a high school, around that 1.2 mark is just a guesstimate. It could be 1.2, 1.3, 1.5. We're not really sure right now as we sit here. And we'll see what the procurement process brings, and we'll see who has interested at that point in time to bid. So that's where, in short, that's where we're at. If you take a look over at the next page.
Just one of them.
Oh, yes, please, Jay.
Feasibility. Is that feasibility for a new school, or, because before you talked about doing different.
Exactly, that's a great question, thank you. If you turn over the next page, I actually included a slide here where we pulled information down that talks about what a feasibility study is. And to your point, that's a great question, because one of the things that the feasibility study is all about is taking a look and says, well, what's feasible here for the school district? Is it a major renovation, or is it a new building, or is it, what does that look like? And so, we won't know. I think that's what Brian Boyle said last night. You kind of won't know until we get this done what the options are for us. So otherwise, it's just a guess. So we're really looking forward to that stage. But if you take a look during the feasibility study, the district collaborates with MSBA too, and I won't read all of this, but a couple of these. Generate an initial space summary based on the district's educational program, document existing conditions, develop and evaluate preliminary and final alternatives for the building project, and that's really what that means there, Jay, is it probably, if it's a rental, then that's what they'll say. If it's not, that's what they'll say. Well, I'm hoping that there's a couple of options.
That committee that I was on, that we looked to the building too, I mean, we did see.
Oh.
Come up with a.
That's right, I forgot about that, thank you for reminding me that, I forgot you were in that committee, that's absolutely right, yeah. So that's in essence where that's at right now, so I don't know if you have any questions on that. And as I say, Dr. McGuire has been working very hard with the educational programming, because one of the things that we need to do in the eligibility period is create an educational profile, an educational plan. We have a lot of things that have to be created, and with the staff as they look forward and say, what does education look like in the next decade to 2 decades? So you're kind of projecting out. And so that's the work that he's doing right now. Questions for either he or I?
Okay. We move on to our enlarging school committee.
Awesome, thank you.
Stick for that. Do you want input on that one, or is that something hard?
Which-
I don't want to have you go back and forth. Is there anything else on here that,
Yes.
while you're here, you want to address, please?
Let me just take one quick peek. I think that might be it. I think probably the rest is,
Investigation.
the expenses. I think, Pat, while you're here, you can speak to the expenses, because that was one of the things that you were asking, if I'm correct, but
That
I
was the
don't.
last meeting, I think it was requested, yeah.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, in the investigation, to date, it's about almost $24,000 for the investigation, and for the PR firm, it's $15,000.
Will those remain static?
I'm not sure about the investigation. We've only been billed to date. We just got a bill in for that. I don't know.
But more work's been done subsequent to that?
We don't know, we don't have anything to do with it, so we don't
Okay,
know.
I didn't know that.
No.
She just pays the bills.
I just pay the bills.
Nobody's reporting back to anyone?
Yes, there is somebody reporting back to the,
But that would be at the school committee,
the school committee.
and not to
so.
us.
Now, for the PR firm, the 15K, I know you had provided some information to me that the initial 10,000 was basically spent the first 2 weeks of November.
Right.
And then you issued another $5,000
Right.
retainer. So has any of that retainer? been
Yes,
spent?
actually, right after I sent that information to you, I think like a day or two later, you got another update that showed, it had been expended all the way down. Because I believe there was still a couple of $1,000s left on that.
No, that was
On the
close.
update that I had sent you.
That was close. The 10 grand was just about all spent. It was like 9,700 and change.
Okay.
And then you had the invoice for the additional retainer. So you haven't.
It's been fully expended, the full 15.
15, so that, other than that, you haven't had any more?
No more.
And I think that is it for us.
Okay, thank you.
But we'll
Again,
be here
thank
to
you.
be helpful for our school committee members.
Okay, on agenda item number 5 on the third school committee seat, I don't know what, if any discussion, we all aware that we're all going to add one and hope we get some good people that sit in to help this process going about.
We had someone at the caucus on Monday. Their hat in the ring, so it's
Okay,
good.
good.
We didn't
No
have
one's taking out papers yet.
No, we haven't had any interest yet, hoping our current members
I'm sorry,
uptake.
excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Joe's going to speak to the person who's interested.
Yes, Joseph Gleason, 126 Brazel Lane. With regards to the third position, there is an individual, gentleman, Brett Collins, has intimated some interest. And what I would request, Mr. Chairman, if possible, if we could put this on your agenda for the 16th, and that we could have a joint meeting between the Lancaster reps and the Board of Selectmen to
Could I ask you to remind Kathy, please? 'Cause I will not probably.
The reason I'm standing up and telling you this is that I already did that, but I didn't get a response back, but I'll follow up with Ms.
Yeah,
Rocket tomorrow.
please, and I'll try to, so noted.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you've done this before, but generally in my past experience, it's, the candidate will come in, we ask a few questions and
If
basically.
they can provide a letter of some background.
I'll let Mr. Collins know.
In advance of.
Oh, I'll tell him to, I'll have it to you this week. I'll make sure he gets
Okay,
it this
great.
week, yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Any other conversation relative to that?
No. Yes.
Okay, investigation report update, is that? I don't know, put that
I
on,
think we just gave it.
that's it?
Well, where are we with?
At the last school committee meeting, I reported that we will have an executive session next week on the 11th and meet with Tim Norris, who's the investigating attorney, and he will be presenting his findings to the school committee at that point in time.
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear, is there a time frame, Kathy?
I'm sorry. Next school committee meeting is March 11th, and the investigating attorney, his name is Tim Norris, is going to present his findings to the school committee at that time.
Is that gonna be an open meeting?
Executive session.
Executive said, okay, got it.
Is that report going to be distributed to the 2 towns, or is it?
There is the report of the findings and then a report, and I can't unfortunately give you a lot of details, but there will be a report that is made public.
Sad situation.
It certainly is.
Okay, discussion on how towns handle the personnel matters. Jay, that's your request?
Yeah, we have bylaws and everything else, but we don't have a board. You people, I'm sure, have a personnel board, right?
No.
No, you don't have any?
We have an HR director.
You do, okay.
Between the HR director and the town administrator, we handle personnel issues.
If we don't have it, we should, I think.
Well, what we have, we don't have a full-time HR director. Our town treasurer also performs HR duties and is trained in HR.
Several hats worn.
Several.
Small towns, what you gotta do, gotta do what you gotta do. Any other questions, Jay?
No, that's really,
Okay, Chief Hanson updated us on the ALS ambulance. Discussion on the town of Bolton's finance team. Jay, that's yours also?
Little finance team, right, from what you were saying?
We have, Bolton has what is called an advisory committee, which is both a finance team, and then they also weigh in on other matters. Every time they give their opinion.
Who's on that team? I mean, what, not personal, I mean, what, different boards or?
No, it's a board it's a committee unto itself. The committee is comprised, well,
It's all volunteers.
It's all volunteers. It's the chairman of the board of selectmen, the town clerk, and the moderator select individuals to participate in that board. Either new members or, when someone terms expired. If some member of that board, the member of that committee resigns or needs to leave in the interim, then the committee internally has the ability to fill that individual's slot for the duration of that person's normal term. That's kind of a rotating.
And they work with the finance committee?
No, they are the finance
It is the
committee.
finance
It's a broader based one, Jay.
They are the
Advisory. It's not just finance, it's extended
Right,
beyond.
right. So
Yeah.
typically, they'll take the first crack at the selectmen's budget. We typically, selectmen typically participate in those joint meetings. We bring in our department heads each year and review, the requested budget. We typically do a budget message, which was again, level spending, as we have done for many years in the past. We review the budget. Typically, for the most part, in the last few years, there's not much differential in those budgets unless there's some capital requirement or need. I mean, I think over the last 10 to 15 years, we've winnowed those budgets down so much that there isn't any fat left, which is good and bad. There's not much free cash that can come back. But they review that. Again, we're part of that. Then we all have a sort of a meeting at the end, and then basically the budget is presented to the selectmen, and the selectmen make a decision on whether or not they approve the budget. But we're all involved in that process.
The way we start the process is probably late October. I write the budget message. I write a draft budget message. I review it with the chair of advisory and make whatever suggested edits they may have. And it goes out from my office. We also have a budget calendar with all the key milestones and events from October all the way to town meeting. So we have a roadmap that takes us all the way. But as Stan said, the advisory committee really drives the budget process, but the selectmen normally attend most, if not all, of the reviews with the department heads. I review the budgets with the department heads in advance, so lately, I tend to not go to the meetings unless a department head asks me to go to help support or clarify something. But I'm responsible for making sure that the budgets are ready to get to the advisory committee.
How large a group, John?
6 people.
6?
Advisory will meet every week, starting the first week of January until really the end of March.
That's right.
And they will send a couple of members to the final selectmen's meeting to handle any, with the authority, usually to handle any, with the authority to handle anything unusual that crops up. But they go through every department's budget, every line item in every department's budget. Yesterday, they met with the school district to talk about the Minuteman as well as Nashoba,
That's right.
to talk about capital requests as well as the budget line items. It's been a very, and it's like this every year, it's been a very thorough examination of both the income and the expenditure side of the budget.
And advisory also has a very, I think, and in a really good way, a really deep understanding of the whole town meeting warrant. Because they make recommendations on many of the articles, I can't say all of them, but many of them, certainly anything that has anything to do with any money. And one process that I implemented my second year in Bolton, was that the selectmen's meeting before the selectmen are gonna sign the warrant. We have our town moderator come in, we have our town council come in, we do a full walkthrough of the warrant from beginning to end, and most times, at least a quorum of the advisory committee is there to participate in the discussion, or at least to listen to the discussion, so they've got the most complete understanding they can have of the warrant too. So they're very involved and in a good way.
And during these budget meetings that we also go through, we get monthly ledgers from the town to see what the spending rates are. To see, you know, are you tracking spending your money? If they've only spent 25%, well, why? This determines whether or not we need to shave a little bit off. But like I said, we've been doing this process now for well over a decade.
I'm just gonna ask you how long you've had that expansive advisory group rather than just a finance committee? A couple, you said 10 years?
Well, we've always had an advisory committee. We've always had.
Yeah, I think I joined it back in '06.
So have you ever had just a finance committee?
I don't know what you mean by just the finance committee, because it's always operated this way.
Right now, Lancaster's finance committee does the same thing you just were talking about, when it's an elected committee.
It's an elected committee, okay. My understanding was state law requires every town to have a finance committee or an advisory committee, but I guess it's left up to each town as to
Yeah, so
how,
you chose the advisory group.
you know, we chose to appoint them and you chose to elect them. But basically, it's the same group with two different names.
Yeah, all the descriptions have fit what our committee does.
Right.
One of the biggest challenges for the budget message is for 11 straight years, trying to find different adjectives to say level fund.
And Don's intimately involved with the department heads for capital. We had a separate capital planning committee, but the fact that they only met a couple of times a year, it really didn't have a pulse on what was going on day to day. We changed that significantly till, I mean, obviously Don's talking with the department heads every day, so.
Is that within your bylaws?
No,
No,
no.
Our TA does the same thing, he spends a lot of time with the finance committee.
And I did the
Various
capital
capital.
presentation to the advisory committee last week or 2 weeks ago, I forget. But so we're in a good place with that, I think, right now.
Okay, we move on to new business and announcements. Anyone have any announcements? I can make an announcement. We threatened 2 years ago, almost to the month, of inviting you folks here. Literally, here we are. So.
well, I mean, the last
I hope
time we
you like
were
it.
in Lancaster, this building didn't exist, so, you know, it's
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We threatened, and we only had 1 or 2 meetings in the interim elsewhere.
Yeah.
Latest one with you
That's the
folks.
room I think we went.
So the next time you build a new building, we'll be back.
Hold your breath on that one.
yeah. Well, I mean, as far as
Renovate town hall.
any new business in the town, we're still having difficulty filling the vacant office building spaces.
Oh, okay.
We had someone who was interested in the Cobham office building on 117 opposite what used to be Future Electronics, but they had to back out because their business kind of imploded.
I just had a thought. What percent of your income on your towns is residential versus commercial / industrial? Do you
Just
know?
under 94%.
Yep, it's
94%.
Same
residential.
boat as we had.
I thought we were high at 85.
No, it's incredible. And what is it? Residential, I don't think farmland, I don't think chapter land is included in the residential, so it's business and chapter land.
Okay. In memory of Brian Burke, we have agenda item 12, Committee of Correspondence. Nobody here knows what that even is, I think, other than potential for having the boards of select people involved amongst themselves. That's my
Yeah,
I don't, this has been on
Yeah.
some time.
Yeah.
So anyways, if you're here, Brian, we'd address it, but you're not, so we can't. Okay, is there any other business to come before the Chi-Town, Tooltown?
I think so.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned. We are adjourned at 8:05. Thank you all.